Nirvana's underwater photo shoot for Nevermind is one of the band's most iconic photo shoots, though the shoot itself didn't go 100% smoothly. During my interview with the photographer from the shoot, Kirk Weddle, he spoke to me about some of the controversy involving the photo shoot. Here's the clip. Your work with Nirvana has become, some of the most iconic photography in rock and roll history, arguably. But I read that the labels at first weren't happy with the work you did.
No, they hated them. Yeah. It's funny because, like, the album cover was so pure, right? And somebody had this idea, Robert, right? He hands it to me. I go out there and I make this picture and come back. So there's nothing from the record label involved at that point, like personally involved. But then when you got to shoot the band, then you got everybody from the label, right? So all these people were involved. So I've got, and it was weird in that the band was still just taking off, and so there wasn't a lot of money for the shoot. So I should have, if I knew then what I know now, I would have had a bigger production, a better pool, catered food, all that stuff, and there would have been a lot more hand holding. But this was just kind of like flying, seat of the pants, and so we shoot this, and so the record label was pissed at me because I didn't have a caterer. The band was pissed at me because I shot them at 10 in the morning, and which I thought was fine. But, band guys, touring musicians don't want to be up at 10 in the morning.
Yeah.
And they were, I shot in LA and they had to be in San Francisco that evening for a show. So, it was tough, and it turned out to be kind of shitty weather. And then the pool motor had broken, so the water was kind of cloudy, and it was difficult, And then Chris Novoselic and David Grohl showed up on time, and then Kurt was a couple hours late, so it was hectic. And in the end, I think the management wanted, it's weird to say this, but they wanted a more glam shot of these guys. They're like, well, we don't like Kurt's hair, and so they were really unhappy with it. They had to piece together 3 different pictures and make it into one poster, and I don't think anybody's ever really seen it.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it ran like in the LA Times one time and then boom, disappeared.
So how long? I mean, you mentioned that Kurt showed up a few hours late. How long was the whole shoot in general? Do you remember?
I would say, it involved my whole life for a little while, but we probably got to the pool at like 7 in the morning, and the talent was probably arriving at supposed to be there at 10. Kurt probably arrived at noon, went right to sleep as soon as he got there, slept for a couple of hours. We were all freaked out about waking him up, and eventually had to wake him up. And I think we spent about maybe an hour and a half shooting. Guys were really good. They worked really hard, all 3 of them. And Kurt, he didn't enjoy it. He's not really a water guy. But we got through it. And so those images, they sort of died on me in that I went from being like this like hot shit dude who did this album cover to being the asshole that fucked up the Nirvana shoot.
Considering the label wasn't happy with your work, even though I think you did a great job, is there
Thank
anything you're welcome. Is there anything you would have done differently in hindsight?
Yeah, I would have been just a little more pro. I would have had a beautiful pool. I would have had a chef there, cooking up fabulous creations, and I would have shot the band on a time when they had a couple days off, and I would have shot them in the late afternoon. But the images, I don't think any of that shit affects the images at all. It was all about the politics of photography. I wasn't hip to that, and so I didn't know. If I doing it again, I'd have 2 big bottles of Jack Daniels sitting there waiting, but I think the images would have been the same. If I could have had a sunnier day, it would have changed them a little bit. If I could have had clear water, it would have changed them a little bit. But all in all, it's kind of it's a little slice of history. I think it's kind of cool the way it is.
Do you have any favorite memories from that day, or in general, your connection to Nirvana?
Well, I was happy I got out alive, I mean, it's a time, underwater is really tiring and difficult, so it was a bitch of a job to do at the time. And then when I delivered the images, they weren't happy with them, so it was pretty brutal for me. But now with the advent of Photoshop, I was able to just clean up the clarity and saturation and stuff a little bit, where before it was pretty flat, and because it was a cloudy day and it was cloudy water. So, it's for better or worse, people like it.
Did you have any relationship with the band before the shoot?
No, none. And I didn't even know about their music or their style of music. I think I might have seen them the night before. I know I went to one show at the Palace in LA, and I didn't even, they gave me, it's way back, so they gave me a cassette tape, and I listened to it, and I'm like, wow. And I didn't really understand it at the time, and I went and saw them, and they put on a hell of a show, and that was it, and my friend, one of the friends I was working with at the time, we were doing advertising photography, shooting cars. He was a set builder, this guy Maynard, right? So Maynard's like, this is the band, man. Because I had these tickets and I wasn't sure if I was going to go. I'm like, fuck, it's a weeknight. I got to shoot tomorrow. And I was talking to him. He's like, I'm going. And he knew more. And he's ended up being later on. He's like, yeah, I got a band too. I'm like, what's the name of your band? He's like, it's Tool. And we're touring the UK. And I'm like, well, shit, man. You did pretty good too. Mm-hmm.
Dude, you got legendary friends, man. That's so cool.
I should give him a shout.
Yeah,
because he's doing really well. And I think he might be doing music again, but I know he did like a winery out in Arizona. He's a smart kid. I knew him when he was just painting backdrops, and he was fixing aquariums.
That's so cool. And what do you off topic, but what do you think of Tool as a band? You like them?
No, not my music at all, but I just admire. So, I can go with almost anything when somebody does it well,
So going back to Nirvana for a second, we've discussed how the label wasn't a fan of the underwater shots you took of the band, initially at least, even though, as we know, those photos are now iconic. In terms of your career, are those some of the most popular photos that you've taken?
It's weird. These images get popular at different times, and I'm not really sure why. So the stuff I did of the band sat dormant for like 15 years. I just had it in a closet in my office. And somebody at some point called me up, somebody in Europe. My stuff sells a lot better in Europe than it does in the States. I don't know why. But some guys in Europe did it, so I, dug out some images, got them scanned, cleaned them up a little bit. And once I did that, I had this huge flow of sales for several years. And then it'll die down and it'll come back. So as soon as I didn't really do it, but I think, he's in the 27 club. And, he died at the top of his game. So all that kind of adds to it in a weird way.
I see that you guys put a ladder across the pool.
Right.
What was the purpose of that ladder?
That's what the drum kit was attached to.
Oh, okay.
So, you take the drum kit, we wired it on top of that ladder, and you flip it over, and it's there,
Okay, because I just, before I took a closer look at it, I just thought that was I don't know, some sort of rail where you would have a camera moving across it like a dolly or something.
No.
And I realized I was.
It was we were I didn't have any experience, I had probably shot 3 or 4 underwater pictures in my life before I shot this, so I was trained in photography, but not trained at all. I did some underwater stuff. I really did a lot of underwater stuff throughout my life, just scuba diving and surfing and stuff. So I was really used to the water, but not used to being a photographer. So I tried to do photography like you do it in a studio underwater. I tried to do that in the ocean, so the first one I did in the ocean, I wanted to set the camera on a tripod at the bottom of the ocean, and I have a guy in a boat, and I'm like, hey, hand me that sandbag. And he hands me a sandbag. I'm talking to him when he hands me a sandbag. And the next thing you know, you're gone, man, because it's 35 pounds and you're treading water, and then you're at 40 feet of water.